Hi, friend. My guest this week is Kim Barnes, the co founder of Parenting Aging Parents. We talk about how to best prepare for potential scenarios, how to navigate paperwork, dementia, how to get your parents to comply, burnout, and just so many things. If you don't have parents, this might be an episode that you want to share with someone who is going through the heartbreak and overwhelm that role reversal brings. It's a good one. Well, you may already know that I'm a huge proponent of a whole food plant based diet. I reversed my heart disease, lost 20 pounds, lowered my blood pressure and cholesterol by following this way of eating. So, if you're ready to add more plant based meals to your life, head over to my website, wellelephant.com, after the show and grab my free cookbook as my gift to you. And if you're really ready to reverse disease like I did, check out my online class, Ace Plant Based Eating, while you're there. I made this class as easy as possible. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And of course, please reach out to me at Lauren@AgeLikeABadassMother.com or on social media. I love hearing from you. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Don't be shy. And now, here we go. Hi, friend. I'm Lauren Bernick, and I'm flipping the script about growing older. From rebels and rule breakers to wellness warriors and wise women, my guests have been influencers since before that was even a thing, and we're not even close to finished. Welcome to Age Like a Badass Mother. Kim Barnes spent more than 30 plus years on the air. She was an award-winning reporter and news anchor for 15 years. Since leaving the news, Kim is seen in corporate videos, commercials, a movie, and also does voiceover work. Kim taught television news reporting at the University of Texas, her alma mater. That's where she also met her husband, former sportscaster Mike Barnes. The dynamic duo has worked together as Barnes Team Media doing communication training. They also have parents in their 80s, which led them to accidentally start an online platform called Parenting Aging Parents in 2021 to support those who are helping their parents as they age. They now lead an online community of more than 28,000 adult children and have a website with 120 plus interviews with industry experts. They are passionate about providing content, connection, and community to make this stage of life less overwhelming, confusing, and lonely. Please welcome my guest, Kim Barnes.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here with you.
I'm glad that you're here. And I just want to say, I personally know Kim. We actually went to high school together, but we didn't know each other in high school. But I knew Kim because she was a cheerleader.
Well, you're young. Yeah, you're younger. You're younger than I am. Yeah.
Even though I don't look it, I'm a grade younger. Yeah. We were just talking about how people are surprised to know. How old are you, Kim?
I'm 58.
58. I mean, you really do look fantastic. And why do you think you look so gorgeous?
Oh, you're so sweet. I do think that genetics have a lot to do with it. When I look at my mom, she really didn't have that many wrinkles. She does now, but was a little later to wrinkle. I think my grandmother also looked pretty good until she passed away at 98. Although one little thing that was funny about her is that I thought she didn't have any gray hair, and she had dark hair. And I remember saying something to her. I think she was in her 80s or something. I said, "It's amazing that you don't have any gray hair." And she just said, "What?" And she has really, really dark hair, so she colored it. But it has been interesting just to kind of see how we age differently. My dad had blonder hair that just got a little darker as he got older, and I feel like that's kind of what's happened to me. My hair's gotten browner, if you will, but I don't have gray hair, but I have browner hair than I used to. But
you don't color your hair?
I highlight it. I do some highlights. Yeah, I do some highlights. Yeah, I do like some highlights occasionally. But one thing that was funny is that, and I don't know if this really has anything to do with it, but I remember saying something to my daughter one time, who's 25, about the fact that, people will often say that they're surprised that, and of course, as soon as I say that, somebody's going to look at me and say like, "Oh gosh, I thought you were 62." So
you look like 100. I think you look great.
But she actually made a comment one time. She just said, "Mom, you probably look a little bit better because you've never smoked or drank." And I said, "Oh." okay, maybe. So
Damn.
yeah,
Too late
who
for
knows?
me.
So I don't know if that has anything to do with it,
No, I
but
think it
clean,
does.
yeah. So
Clean living. Yeah.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
you look great. And
Thank you.
but yeah. And so we went to Robert E. Lee High School in Houston, Texas together, now named Tiny Wisdom, which is a hilarious name for a school, isn't it? Do you remember? It's
Yes.
named after an old teacher of ours, Miss Wisdom.
Yes. Oh, yes. I was on yearbook staff. I knew
Yeah,
Mrs. Wisdom well. And so it is funny because people think, oh, Wisdom High School, that's kind of,
that's weird.
silly.
And
And
also Tiny Wisdom. It's just
right.
you're only going to be a little bit smart if you go there. So don't go there.
Right. I hadn't
But
even
yes,
thought of that. Yeah.
named
Absolutely.
after a beloved teacher there. So that's really
Yes.
funny. But
Yep.
anyway, well, then we sort of reconnected in this or connected because, like I said, we didn't really know each other,
Hmm.
but in a women's networking group, and we've kind of stayed in touch a little bit.
Hmm.
But then I really did actually start using your Parenting Aging Parents platform. And I have to say, I am not a big joiner of things, especially
Hmm.
like Facebook groups, because to me, I feel like it always devolves into just people complaining and blah, blah. But I really didn't find that with your group.
Mm.
That's one reason I was so impressed. And even I wasn't going to join it until I got an email and it said something discussing narcissistic parents. And I was like,
Mm.
oh, this maybe they do understand what I'm going through. Cause, in the back of my mind, I'm like, nobody knows what I'm going
Mm.
through. It's just nobody has this same situation. And it turns out maybe it's like a generational thing. I don't know. But I think a
Mhm.
lot of people are
Mhm.
dealing with
Mhm.
narcissistic parents. And it
Mhm.
adds like another level because, right, you're just dealing
Mm.
with all
Mhm.
these things, trying to take care of your parents, and then they are not appreciative or
Mhm.
maybe not able to appreciate, or I don't know. Maybe we could talk
Yeah.
about that a
Yeah.
little bit. But anyway, I
Sure.
found it to be very helpful. And I actually found an assisted living place for her through your
Mhm.
platform by asking, And so I really did think it was very, very helpful.
Thank you. We have been just so, I don't know about pleasantly surprised or not even surprised necessarily. When we started the platform, it was really a little bit as an experiment to see, are there other people that want to discuss this? Because what I was really noticing is that this affects every family to some degree and at some point, yet nobody talks about it, which makes
Mhm.
it even more confusing, more overwhelming, more lonely, all of those things. And you don't even, I always say, you don't even know what you're supposed to Google. I don't even know what I'm looking for here.
Right.
When we started the group, we thought that we would, start the community and see if people wanted to be part of that conversation, because we just felt like if we do talk about it, we can help each other. And we also started doing the interviews at the same time, since we thought, well, we're former journalists. That's what we know how to do, is interview people. And what we felt like from the beginning was that would be the part that would be the most valuable. And while it is so important to get the accurate information, because when you Google, you're going to get all kinds of answers. And how do you even know what applies to me? So the information, of course, is so important. But what we didn't even realize, to the extent of the importance of the community and just that feeling of, I'm not the only one going through this. And
Mhm.
even though it doesn't fix your problem or my situation or your situation, it at least is that, not just misery loves company kind of adage, but just
Right.
truly, it just makes you feel like I'm not the only one who is sitting here in the middle of the day trying to manage doctor's appointments, work, etc., and thinking I'm just going to go a little bit bonkers if I can't get this figured out. Or I've spent 3 hours on the phone with mom's health insurance today, and oh my gosh, just let me bang my head against the wall kind of thing. I think just having the fact that that other people are, locking arms with you. And again, they're doing their own journey while you're doing yours. It just still, there's so many commonalities that can just help you feel like you're not the only one.
Yeah. And that is really true. And remember people posting like pictures of, taking care of their dad. There was one lady in particular she put her dad in these cute, funny t-shirts every day.
Yes.
And it was, it did make you feel a little bit better
Mhm.
because it's true. Like I cannot tell you, and this is true, all the hours I spent on the phone trying to get, like, just
Mhm.
say her long-term care insurance started.
Mhm.
That was just, I was like, these people are just hoping that I'm going to give up. And I
Mhm.
did not. And
Mhm.
maybe let's start there with like, because my mother, I was very fortunate. She had two long-term care insurance policies.
Mm.
And that's like maybe something that people that are our age now in their 50s or 60s, maybe could think about purchasing for their kids in case, they get sick. That's just something to throw out there. But I think they don't even make the kind of policy that my mom had anymore because it was
You're
so
ex-
good.
you're exactly right. No, they do not. Many of those companies have gone out of business.
Oh, I bet.
But they just didn't, their algorithms or their, actuary tables or whatever were not very accurate as far as, okay, we're going to give these great benefits. And if the average age they live to is X, well, then we can afford to do that. But if they go ahead and
Oh,
live longer than that, then that's my understanding is a lot of the companies have gone out of business because they just couldn't they had promised such great benefits and it's not sustainable. And so I think you're right. Most of the long-term care insurance policies, the interview that we did, I'm not an insurance agent, I don't sell long-term care insurance, but a lot of the ones that the financial planners talk about or the insurance agents talk about are more of a hybrid plan, maybe a life insurance with a rider or some other kinds of things to be able
oh,
to provide, because a lot of the policies back in the day also, from what I understand, were very much more like your car insurance or your homeowner's insurance, where you get it for the year. And if you don't use it, then, oh, well, your premiums just went to nothing, peace of mind perhaps. But that was often some of the ways the long-term care insurance policies were as well. So if you never ended up using it, that was just, money, 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 money that
right,
you were spending all those years for premiums that you never got to benefit from. And a lot of
right.
those now have ways to pass along to your heirs, if it's more of a life insurance with some sort of a healthcare rider or that kind of thing. So they do look a little
Yeah.
different now.
I bet because my mom was probably one of the ones that bankrupted them. I mean, she got hundreds of thousands of
Hmm.
dollars of benefits. I don't know what we would have done without it. So she
Hmm.
had two, and one had, it was called a homemaker's something. Like
Hmm.
she just got $4,000 a month just for being a homemaker
Wow.
on top of all her health care. I am not kidding. It was crazy. But to get them started, I want to tell you, my advice on this, and you might have some advice too, is to look through their policy, or if they have
Hmm.
one, and get ready. If you haven't used it yet, see what the benefits
Hmm.
are, call them up, just say, what is the daily benefit? There's one usually for like skilled nursing, one for assisted living, one for just having somebody come in the house and take care.
Hmm.
See what it is daily,
Hmm.
and just get ready, man, to
Hmm.
start do some paperwork because it is tough.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice about that?
We neither of our parents have long-term care insurance policies, so we haven't had to go down that road. But your advice is very spot on as far as know what's in the policy and what's
Hmm.
covered, because some of
Right,
them may have very specific. It's only going to be valid if they're in skilled nursing, but not if
right,
they're in assisted living. It may
right.
be that it's only if they're in a community, not at home, or vice versa. So there can be some very, very specific uh, mentions in there that will be really important to know so that
Yeah.
you can make better decisions on, okay, well then if we need to be able to use this, let's make sure that we're in the environment that's going to allow us to. And there
Hmm.
are companies out there also who can help you if you do have either a policy that you're trying to get initiated and you're having a lot of trouble, you got denied, or just want that help from the very beginning. There are companies. And again, how would you know
Yeah.
if because I've never done this before, so many of these services and providers that are out there that can help us, I wouldn't know about them because I've never had to use them personally.
Right.
And so there are companies that are out there that can help you navigate this process, because it is designed, a lot of times I think, homeowners insurance can kind of be the same way too. They'd rather you not have to use your
Yes.
policy than use it. But
Yeah.
but there are ways to be able to make sure that you get the benefits that they deserve.
Do you have information on your website about that? On parenting aging parents?
We have an interview that we did about long-term care insurance, kind of explaining what it is, some of the different kinds of policies that there are today.
Okay.
And we do have somebody on our resource guide currently that's a company that can help you do that too.
Okay, cool. Maybe we should back up a little bit. So like, let's talk about, I mean, we just jumped into that, but like,
Right.
tell me maybe what's the most common thing that you see that people have issues with? Is it dementia
Well,
or
I think
is
there's
it
I think there's probably
managing?
yeah, I think there's probably two. And I
Okay.
think one is dementia, which is just kind of we can talk more about that. I think it almost is just a whole category by itself because it just throws everything off, I feel
Mhm.
like. Just everything becomes different because of that. I think the next separate from that, I think the most common issue I see is I guess really overall it's communication as far as when you have a situation where mom and dad aren't maybe you don't feel they're safe at home anymore and you really want to move to an independent living community. They don't see it that way. They think everything is fine and you're noticing the issues that are, the grass isn't getting mowed, the food is expiring in the refrigerator, just all of those things that you're noticing that really are red flags to you. Nobody's eating very well, dad fell a couple times, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Or, is it we need to really talk about not driving anymore and they don't want to talk about it? Or, so I think there's so many of those situations that really, the overarching is the fact that it all comes down to communication. And some of that can be done more easily with some parents, and some can be a little more difficult depending
Right.
on their personality and temperament. And again, if you just take dementia out of it completely, because that again
Right.
throws it off. But I think that it's really figuring out what appeals to the parent and what is it that will make them it become their decision, because anytime it can be our own decision. And we know this when you have kids and you're trying to decide, do you want to wear red socks or blue socks, those kinds of things. When you can empower your kid to make a decision and let it be theirs, they're generally going to go with it a little bit more, even if it's, do you want broccoli or green beans, those kinds of things.
Mhm.
But I think the same can be true, and not to oversimplify it with our parents, because obviously with our parents, oftentimes the stakes are a lot higher, the issues are a lot bigger. Although sometimes you may just be trying to get your parents to eat more vegetables. True. I mean, just like
Right.
with your children, truly, because as they age, their sweet tooth becomes stronger, and they may not want the healthier choices. But I
Mhm.
think when you can think of what's going to appeal to them, in our situation with Mike's parents, his dad was much more open to the idea of them moving from out in the country, an hour east of Dallas, to an independent living community with my mother-in-law having Alzheimer's. He was much more open to that discussion because we approached it, or he and his sister, Mike and his sister approached it from, this is going to be better for mom. And
Yeah.
that made him listen. Where if it had been
Right.
just, we think it'll be better for you too, he would have probably been more inclined to say, I'm good. I'm good. But he'll do anything if he feels like it's better for her. There are
Mm.
other parents who may be willing to do it because it's going to make your life easier as the kid. Some do, some don't. It depends, and it sounds like, you've been through the situation where
Yeah.
that would not have been the right play. That would not have been the right
Right.
discussion. And, even with my mom, who's she's very, she's pretty easygoing and I don't know. I mean, we can kind of boss her around a little bit. I won't let her listen to this, but but we can more tell her what we think she should do. And part of that's because my parents divorced when we were in high school. She was single for a long time. She did remarry, and then her husband passed away. So my brother and I have been kind of the key parts of her life for so long. But even still, when we were having to really wrestle with the car, I just would say, okay, mom, I know that if you were to drive down the street and hit a kid on their bicycle in your neighborhood, you would never forgive yourself.
Oh, that's good.
And that was a little bit of the approach that I took. And again, not that you want to guilt them into doing stuff or shame them or whatever, it's figuring out what might be
Yeah.
what will appeal to them and let
Yeah,
it be their choice.
that's that's a very good point. And that was actually surprisingly easy to get my mom to move from her house, my mom
Mhm.
and her husband,
Mhm.
to they started an independent living. And honestly, I was like, "Mom, wouldn't it just be so nice to just have friends around all the time and
Mhm.
activities and just go to the dining room? You don't have to cook." And I would
Mhm.
be like, "It's like living at a hotel," because
Yeah.
she loves a hotel. And so I guess without even realizing I was picking the right way to approach
Mhm.
her, I did. And she was like, "Yeah,
Mhm.
that sounds nice."
Mhm.
And we did find, nice places, and I was lucky that I moved her before she got sick. So she did
Yeah.
get to enjoy
Yeah.
some of the nice independent living.
Mhm.
And I think at that point, my other advice, and maybe you can talk about this, was at that point when she was moving, I kind of said, can I look through your bills and can we kind of
Mhm.
get an idea of what's going on just in case, God forbid, something happens and I
Mhm.
have to take things over? Then I'll already know what I'm doing. And she, again, so easy, was like, "How about you just take over all the bills and just pay you just handle everything?" And I was like, "Well, crap." I didn't want to start that, but I was like, "You
Yes.
know what? It's better than having to struggle with it later." So I
Yes.
did.
Yes.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, what do you have to say on
Well,
that
yeah,
subject?
the finances can be a whole nother thing. When we do presentations, a lot of times we'll talk about, what are the 5 key conversations that you need to have, and the financial part of it is such a key point, because the sad part is that that situation, their financial situation, affects almost every other decision.
Mhm.
Can they move to an independent living
Right.
community? Can they afford to do that? Do they have options? Can they bring in care if they really want to stay at home? And so I think that having those conversations, and I think the way you approached it sounds great, because it was a little bit more of a hypothetical. Hey, let me
Right.
just start getting aware of this. Every situation a little bit different. We had to sort of more forcefully take over, and not forcefully would be the right word, but more proactively, because mom had gotten scammed a couple times. And
Yes.
that once that happened, and we started noticing that there was just a little bit of processing that wasn't going on quite as it needed to, for her to keep paying her bills herself, we took over that and started managing that. And like in your case, you ended up managing
Yeah.
it before you really had intended.
Right.
And in our case, we really had to, I mean, it was really for protection, because she was getting so many phone calls, and someone had gotten into her bank account, and those kinds of things. You've seen. Oh, we hear the saddest stories in our community about parents who have either been the romance scams,
Oh,
where somebody thought that some country singer had befriended her and was now in love with her and was going to move her, but he just needed some money to do blah blah blah, just awful stuff. And even just scams that through the computer, where if you've seen the movie Beekeeper, it's horrifying.
oh,
It's more of a shoot 'em up kind of movie, but at the beginning, the premise, the whole thing starts because of a woman getting scammed out of, because
oh,
somebody calls, says, Microsoft needs to be updated. She calls the number, they have her click some keys, and now they're in her computer, and
oh
they
no.
take all the money for a nonprofit. And anyway, it's awful. But we hear real life stories of things where either they get scammed because they're promised that they've won a sweepstakes or something like that, or my mom fell prey to the gift card scam, which, just when you think about it logically, is so ridiculous. I got an email the other day from somebody that said, "Hey, could you help me? My niece has a birthday, but I can't get money to her yet. Can you do this and I'll pay you back," kind of thing. And there's just so many out there. But I think
Yeah.
that
And
that's
that came from somebody you knew, allegedly?
like very not well,
Like
but
it
yes, because
looked.
people, right, because people will hack into people's email addresses and then be able
Mhm.
to send emails on their behalf that look like they're coming from them.
Right.
But that finance piece is just, because the stakes are so high, and the care for an aging parent is so expensive, or can be so expensive. You obviously want to protect every penny that they
Right.
have. And scams are definitely not the way you want them, or them giving money to people that they think that they need to. But getting that picture of what their finances look like, and knowing that people can change too. My father-in-law was always very tight-lipped. Mike had no idea how much his dad made growing up. He was a CFO of a company, but as he's gotten older and wanting to make sure that Mike's mom is well cared for, he, gives them the spreadsheet, if you will, just to say, if something happens to me, here's how you'll care for mom. And figuring out what is the right approach in. Do you want to be on their bank accounts? Do you not want to be on their bank accounts? What are there's so many different ways that you can help in that aspect, but just really having to figure out what makes the most sense in your situation. Everybody's situation is a little bit different.
Don't you really want to try to get on their bank accounts on everything so that you don't have to probate a will later? Or
there's quite a few interviews on the website about legal stuff and wills and probate and all of that. And it can get a little bit tricky most of the time. Yeah, there are things like ladybird deeds if you're in the state of Texas, and I think there are a number of other states that have a ladybird deed, so that it's more of a for your house, where it's basically kind of a transfer on death. So that you're right. So that way it just goes automatically to whoever it's supposed to go to.
Yeah. It might be called something else in another state. Probably not ladybird, but because my dad lives. Is it ladybird after
there's a ladybird trust in, I think, 7 or 8 states. I forget it's on the website. I can't remember the number of them. And then the other states have something called transfer on death. There's some differences about what they do exactly, and if you have authority to be able to sell while they're still alive, things like that. But I think that and when you're on a bank account, just being on a bank account doesn't make it. There's sometimes a box you have to check that says that this will be transferred on death. So you have to make sure that all those boxes are checked, because sometimes things default off. And there are things that you can do. We have a whole interview on how to, what happens when you go through probate, and some of the things that you can do to try to help avoid that. If you don't have enough, that it's going to have to, if there's a lot of assets you might want to, in some situations you want to trust, in some situations you can make a lot of this that will transfer automatically. And there's different, I don't want to get into too much legal stuff, because that's not
a lot. There's so much stuff. There's a lot to know. That's why.
For sure. And it also helps us, I think about, as we're getting older, okay, what are the things that I need to be putting in place now for myself? We realized a few years ago when we started Parenting Aging Parents and did our first interview on powers of attorney, Mike and I looked at each other and realized, one, we had done a floppy disk will when our son was born, literally printed off the form from the floppy disk and had it notarized and signed at Mike's dad's office. We had never updated it. And now we had 2 kids, and one's 21, one's 24. We had never updated it. We hadn't thought about it. And we didn't have powers of attorney ourselves. We've since rectified that. But I think it helps you realize, okay, yes, let's make sure mom and dad have their documents in order. What are the documents that we need to also be getting in order as well?
Yeah, it's shocking when you think, God, I got to get myself together now for my kids.
Well, we had both of our kids do powers of attorney as well, because if something were to happen to them and they're not married, am I going to be able to help and assist them? And if I don't have a power of attorney, even as their parent, I may or may not be able to get some of that access.
Oh, really?
Once they're 21. Yeah. And that's why a lot of people, or maybe it's even 18. That's why a lot of people will tell you that when your kids go off to college, you should get at least a basic POA, because if something were to happen to them in college, the hospital doesn't necessarily have to talk to you, or those kinds of things, because you're not, they're an adult.
I didn't even realize. I just never thought of that. Okay, that's good. So, all right. So you need to talk to your parents about their finances, and then let's keep talking about money, because it is so crazy to pay for some of these things like assisted living. So, okay, let's, I'm sure people know. So there's like 3 levels of when you're going to move your parents somewhere. It's like
Mhm.
independent living.
Well,
Where
and even before that, there are the kind of 55, or actually, I think most of them have changed to 60 plus, but 60 plus communities where they're
okay,
more like an apartment complex for 60 plus, but they're not going to provide any. It's you're independently living there, totally independent, full kitchen.
okay,
You're cooking your own meals. They might have happy hours or things like that in the lobby, and some activities. There are quite a few of those in the Austin area, and I know all over the country. Just more of a senior apartment complex, if you will.
right,
Then there's independent living, which is kind of now becoming more of the senior community, if you will. And there
right,
are going to be some that are going to be independent living only. That's when my mom first moved. That was what she chose. And we didn't think it was the best option. But at the time, it was her idea or her decision. And so we just kind of went with it. And it worked for a few years and before we moved her again. But that in that sense, when it's called independent living, it generally is more like living at a hotel or a dorm or a cruise ship or whatever you want to, however you'd like to describe it, or whatever might make your parent interested,
right,
where they're going to you're still in an independent apartment, yet there's going to be a cafe, a dining room downstairs that provides, depending on the place, usually 2 to 3 meals a day. You have activities that are organized. They may have transportation to the grocery store once a week. They may take you to doctor's appointments if you want to. You may still drive. There's lots of options. Then after that is going to be assisted living, which is, as it sounds, where you're going to be able to get more assistance. Same is true where there's still activities. That one, the biggest difference I noticed was when my mom was in independent living, she had a full kitchen. When she moved to assisted living, which just happened a couple months ago after her femur break, there is a refrigerator, and there's no dishwasher,
mhm,
there's no oven, there's no microwave, there's no cooking appliances, if you will, anymore.
right,
That was the biggest difference. Yeah. And then after that, there is and some of these are going to be they're called CCRCs, Continuing Care Retirement Community. That is one that has all three levels. Where my mom
oh,
lives, there it's a high rise, and there's independent living floors, there's assisted living floors, and in that particular community, there's
right,
memory care being separate. And then there's some communities might also have skilled nursing, where if you're needing to rehab, or then you're getting more into, is it a temporary stay for being able to heal from a stroke, a sickness, of bone break or something like that. And if that needs to become 24/7 care, then that can also become a little bit more of your nursing home
right.
entity. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I'm just going to say, well, first, I actually, let's go back to the femur break. Can we
Yeah.
talk about that?
Sure.
Because we talked about this and I said, my mom, this I think is a side effect, because it says right on the medication. I don't know what all the, for your bones, what
Mhm.
all the osteoporosis treatments are called, but the one my mom was taking was Boniva, and there had
Mhm.
since been a class action lawsuit. Femur breaks is one of the side effects. It says right on the medicine packaging. My mother developed, it was called trigeminal neuropathy, I think,
Hmm.
and it was just constant in her jaw,
Mm.
constant pain, so much so it debilitated her. She couldn't get out of bed. It was horrific. So
Mm.
before you put your parents on these bone medications, I'm going to go ahead and warn you to really look into that, because your mom had something, my mom had something. Luckily, my mom was able to get a surgery called CyberKnife. It was a laser surgery and it
Mhm.
basically cut the nerves. So she was always asking me, am I drooling? I feel like I'm drooling. And she
Oh,
wasn't. She
right.
wasn't.
Right.
Thank
But she just
God.
was, but she couldn't
But
feel it.
she couldn't feel her mouth,
Mm.
which was better than being in constant pain. So,
Right.
just is that what you think your mom's was from? The
The brief conversation, we're going back to the orthopedic next week for a follow-up. So I'll be curious to just dig in a little bit more. But the orthopedic, when he saw it, said that it's not uncommon for somebody, if you've been on osteoporosis medicine for a length of time, because of the way it breaks. because the femur is a really hard bone to break. You know, I can remember somebody, a guy friend in high school who
That's
broke
your
his femur
thigh, right?
playing it's your thigh bone,
Yeah.
playing football. And that was, you know, or something
Yeah.
crushed it. I mean, it was that's a hard bone to break. And he, you know, had even said that I wouldn't be surprised if it had been, had weakened to the point where when she was getting out of bed and at midnight, 12:30 in the morning to go to the bathroom, that it might not have snapped. And that's what made her fall. It wasn't just because, again, it's a hard bone to break. And it's not uncommon, from what he shared with me, in that age group for people who'd been on osteoporosis medicine for an extended period of time. And who knows, maybe I haven't researched it all, so I don't want to, you know, make crazy claims, but it, you know, may have something to do with your predisposition for, you know, the way your bones are made and or how long you've been on it and that kind of thing. But that was really scary to hear, that she had been complaining actually of her thigh hurting. And I had asked a couple of people about it, and everybody just thought it was muscular. So that is the biggest word.
That's a good lesson.
The biggest word of wisdom is just that if you ever have bone pain, from what I understand, feels different. I asked my physical therapist about it. It's a deeper pain. If you have a parent, or frankly, I guess if you do have a pain that just feels, you know, deep, it might be bone pain, which that's something that because the doctor told me if he had looked at her, if she'd had an x-ray the week before, he would have said, he would have been able to look at it and say, this bone is about to break. We need to do, she would have still had to have surgery and put a rod in it, which wouldn't have been great. It might have been a little bit of an easier recovery though on a intact bone versus one that, I mean, literally her bone went like this.
Snapped.
It was just, it was displaced. And there's a big term for it. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but displaced something. But he just, he said and of course he's a trauma orthopedist. So he sees that more than the average. Yeah. But it was really made me so sad because she had been complaining and I'd been asking like, she's complaining about her leg hurting. What is it? And nobody could, we didn't get an x-ray. So again, that's another was if you have leg pain, get an x-ray. That's the cheapest diagnostic tool there is for something like that.
Yeah. And I'm just going to say, you know, I'm not trying to trash these companies, but there have been class action lawsuits. So I know this is an issue. Okay. So getting back to paying for these things, what does Medicare or Medicaid pay for any of these things? No.
Well, not in independent living, and most of the time not in assisted, from what I have learned. And there's so many different little, like, except this situation kind of thing.
Right.
But for the most part, independent living, assisted living, and memory care is for the most part private pay. And it gets really expensive. There may be, sometimes there's a special Medicare program or a Medicaid waiver. If you're on Medicaid, they're not for independent living, but for some of the other levels, if you will. Now, when my mom was in skilled nursing for her recovery from her bone break, yes, Medicare paid for.
Medicare will pay.
Medicare,
I think they pay, like 120 days or something. A year
gets a little tricky in there. Yeah. Because I know that when I appealed the first time when they were trying to discharge her after 3 weeks. And what I was kind of advised was that there's a max. I think it's either 100 or 120. You get a max per year. And their concern was, well, you don't want to try to burn them all now, because what if you need them later? And
but I know now.
I know. And so that's where it gets a little tricky. And frankly, I felt like she would benefit from getting back to a little bit more of her routine, even though she wasn't getting as much physical therapy in her when she went back to assisted living, because you're getting outpatient physical therapy. It's not just in skilled nursing, it's right there, and you're getting it 5 days a week. And that was necessary and so important when she first was there. But it got to the point after she'd been there for a while, because it's really more like being in the hospital, because you're in a hospital bed. It's, you're in you're not in your normal situation. And so it's really a hard balance, because you want them to be getting that physical therapy, and you also want them to be back in a place where they're more comfortable and getting, just getting a different attention and having activities and things like that to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Everything's like a balance. Okay. So So how do you pay? So what do you do? Is that why? I guess that's why a lot of people end up having to have their parents in their house or move in with their
Hmm.
parents, and then that's when the stress. I mean, I can't even imagine I was so stressed just trying to manage her life, but
Hmm.
not physically take care of her.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about these angels who are physically caring for their parents, and
Yeah.
how do they still take care of themselves? Like, where's the balance? How do you manage that?
It is tough stuff. It is really tough. And I think I think what happens is that a lot of people aren't taking good care of themselves. There are statistics that show that cases of, I forget what there's a pretty high percentage of where the caregiver is the one who ends up getting really sick and or even dying first
Yeah,
because they're so focused on the person they're caring for. And typically I think that's often when it's a spouse,
a spouse, right?
spouse is caring for the other spouse and they're both
Hmm.
older and can definitely be a really a bad recipe. And that was one of the reasons why we really pressed with my father-in-law to get him to move my mother-in-law to memory care, was because we could see how much it was wearing on him.
Yeah,
Just the fact of, if you're with somebody who's not ever sleeping a full night's rest, well, you aren't either. And
yeah.
that you can only do for so long. But I think that especially with the adult children who are having parents either moving in with them or they're moving in with the parents, it's really hard. And, we hear stories all the time of, I haven't had a day off I'm on, 24/7, 7 days a week. And sometimes my sibling can't find the time to come spend one weekend because they're away. And so they don't even realize what the intensity is for that experience. And it's really having to figure out, are there ways to be able to get a respite stay? Can you afford to bring in some help during the day so that you can go out for a little while just to exercise, or if you're trying to work still. So many people, we also hear that a lot, where
Oh
how am I
gosh.
going to keep working full time if I need to be away at my job? I can't do it from home. Or even if I'm doing it from home, but mom, I'm on the computer and trying to work and mom needs me every 5 minutes. It's really hard to get your work done. So I think that it is a really, really hard balance. Being able to put people in place around you, whether it's private caregivers or a caregiver agency that can come in and provide some of that extra help. If there are daycare programs, if you will, that you can potentially have your parents attend, which are going to be cheaper than them living in a community
Hmm.
and give you some of those opportunities. But again, most of that's going to be private pay. One thing that a lot of people don't realize though is there are often veteran benefits. If your parent
Oh,
is a veteran or the spouse of a veteran, there are oftentimes some different benefits. There, again, depends on when they served and some of those kinds of things, but there are ways to be
how
able
do
to
you
get
find
in
that
here.
out?
Go to the VA's website.
Okay,
Yeah, and I
interesting.
mean, literally just do a Google search for veterans aid and attendance or
Okay,
qualifying for benefits, and you can do a few quick Google searches, and you can find some information about those kinds of things. And there are ways that you can certainly submit that yourself, and there are also companies that can help you uh,
okay.
get all the paperwork, because first thing you have to do is get all that paperwork. Do you have their
Oh,
ID number and some of those things? And that's one of the things that when we created the Caregiver's Key, we tried to include all of those kinds of things. When you can ask those questions when they're hypothetical and we're just gathering information, it might be more accessible than if you're in the middle of a crisis and dad now has dementia. He doesn't remember where those documents are or things like that.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about the caregiver's key? That's something we can get on your website,
Sure.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
It's actually there's one
right
right there.
behind you.
Right there.
Well,
Yeah.
a lot of people are just going to be listening. Some will watch
Yes,
on
of course.
YouTube, but
Yes, so
um,
it is a workbook that we created called The Caregiver's Key, a guide for gathering essential information. It's
oh,
on our
smart.
website. We also have a digital version as well. So there's a spiral bound copy and a digital version, depending on your preference. But it really is just to kind of prompt you about all the things that you may not even realize that you need to know, whether it's, of course, some of the obvious, their prescriptions, their drug allergies, their doctors, but every that, as well as who mows their grass, what bills do they pay online, do we need account numbers for their online bills, what are their financial what's their financial information? Do they have a pension? Do they have only Social Security? Those kinds of things, so that you have a sense of their financial picture, as well as even just some of the personal house stuff. Do you know the alarm code? Do you know their password to their phone? Do you know what their final wishes are? It's just a place to be able to kind of prompt you so that you can think about and gather that information that you might not even think that you might need, and
Oh,
maybe
wow.
don't need right this minute, but maybe need somewhere down the road.
Gosh, Kim, you
Yeah.
got a big brain on you. That's a good guide. The Caregiver's Key. Okay,
Yeah.
so get that on parentingagingparents.com. That's very smart. That would have been like really helpful to me to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about dementia now, because like you said, that is its own whole special thing.
Yeah.
So your husband's actually, like you said, going through that with his mother, right?
She has advanced Alzheimer's.
Alzheimer's. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
here,
different, but okay,
well,
tell
no,
us.
here's the thing. This was, again, you don't know what you don't know. And this was until we started doing interviews about all the things that I needed to know about. Dementia is just an umbrella term. It is it's like cancer. Cancer is a term, and there's a bunch of different kinds of cancer. Dementia is the same. Dementia is an umbrella term. And underneath it, there are about 7 of the most common types of dementia, Alzheimer's being the one that we hear the most about. But when you hear about some of was it Bruce Willis that has I always pronounce it wrong, frontal temporal dementia, that's a type of dementia as well. That's different. It's in your frontal temporal area of your brain. They affect different parts of your brain. Vascular dementia is a common one, and there are some other ones as well. We actually have an interview on that, the most common types of dementia. My mom is considered to have mixed dementia, Alzheimer's and vascular dementia together. And and you probably heard about Lewy body dementia is another one.
So what's that for people?
That's just a different type. And that one, I'm trying to think of which there's been some celebrities. I'm trying to remember if I don't want to.
That I think is that what Celine Dion has? Oh no, she has stiff persons.
Yeah.
Maybe her husband had that. I don't know why I'm associating that with her, but okay.
Lewy
Somebody's
body,
had that.
Yeah, there's been quite a few public. I can't remember if that's what Robin Williams had. I can't remember.
Maybe.
Again, I don't want to start making up things.
Right. We're starting
rumors.
Up.
Yeah. Don't want to make up any rumors. But Lewy body is one of the most, just like some of the symptoms are just awful, where they have just these awful hallucinations and can make you think that that your wife of 50 years is now trying to kill you, or really. I've heard an expert, Dr. Tam Cummings, talk about it, and she talks about that they have these awful hallucinations of children, bugs, and things like that. So it's a really awful, type. Not that the others aren't bad too,
right?
But we're now at the stage with Mike's mom and she's been this way for a while, but she doesn't know who anybody is, and it's just heartbreaking. We were just there a week or so ago, and she was just scared. She didn't know who she was. She didn't think, she was like, nobody knows me, and just was scared. And but reverting back to things about mommy and daddy and things like that, which is just.
Does she think she's a child, or
we think? Yeah, best we can tell. And the way I've heard Dr. Cummings describe it is that if you think about your life in file cabinets, and you've got, the file cabinets of your life, and the top being the most recent, and they go down to where, from your childhood. And she said it's as if those file cabinets just get shut, and then you start sort of reverting back. And so that she said you can literally have an 84-year-old woman who thinks that she's a 15-year-old playing on the high school basketball team, and literally thinks that, or even younger, that she's 4 and waiting for her mom or dad to come home from work. And so I think that with dementia, the thing that for me that has been most difficult is that it just doesn't make logical sense. If somebody breaks a bone, you're not going to ask them to run up the stairs as they're recovering. You're going to, you understand what the recovery looks like. With dementia, what I find, because it doesn't make sense, I'll find myself looking at my mom and just thinking like, okay, like, really? You really don't know what you just ate for lunch 5 minutes ago? Really? Like, how, like, it just seems mind-boggling. And so that's where you have to really take a step back. And it's so hard because it just doesn't make logical sense. And because of that, a lot of what happens is the mental processing, the doing three things in a row, like telling somebody, can you go to the bedroom? Can you go grab that and bring it back here? Or even like sometimes with my mom, she'll have a form that she gets. She just recently got a bill from the hospital from her hospital stay. And she said, what am I supposed to do with that? Okay, don't need to do anything. I'll take care of it. Can you get the caregiver to text me a picture of it when she comes tomorrow, since mom lives 3 hours away from me? Can you have her take a picture of it, text it to me, and I'll take care of it? Okay, well, if you think about it, that's multiple steps.
Yeah, she can't
right?
do that.
Right. So it's literally, oh, yeah, I'll do that. Okay, can you go get the sticky note? Okay, great. You got the sticky note? Great. Okay, come back over to the piece of paper. Okay, can you stick it on the paper? Can you write the words? What did you write down? Kimberly. Okay, that's not going to be enough information. What else do we need to write? Please text to Kimberly or something like that. And so it really is just, I mean, similar again, when you're teaching your children, you have to break things down. And that's what I'm seeing with my mom as well, is you have to break things down. The sad part though, is that with our children, they're going to generally be able to take those little bitty steps that you put together, or little steps that you've done separately, and they're going to be able to put them together and be able to do it all in one task. Where unfortunately, at the more advanced dementia, it's not going to, you can't teach them in the same way. Mm-hmm. They're not going to pull those together. So I think that, and really the hardest part, I think too, is that when you have parents who don't acknowledge that there's an issue and really don't think anything is wrong, and are then you're seeing the writing on the wall of, okay, things are in the wrong places. I'm finding keys in the refrigerator. I'm finding, bread in the pantry or the medicine cabinet in the bathroom, or, things like that, where you start thinking, oh, things are not going well. And my mom is very compliant. That was the word I was looking for earlier. Very compliant. But yet when we've had to go through all of these doctor's appointments, and when she was going to the emergency room and all of that, and meeting new doctors now that she's in assisted living, and they'll say, oh, okay, we see that you're allergic to this. And, this was her first hospital stay since I was in 5th grade. She had never spent the night in the hospital until this break, except more than like 50 years ago. But they would say something about, oh, and they're just going down the list of, like, okay, allergies, blah, 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 and dementia, blah, blah. And she's like, I don't have dementia.
Oh.
So some people know and are aware, and some people are not. And which is better? I don't know sometimes.
Right.
Because she just goes about her merry way, but she doesn't acknowledge that that's an issue.
Oh man. And it's so hard. Like, like, how do you handle those kinds of things, especially when they're repeating themselves and they don't know what you're talking about, or you have to do something like, Mom, have them text it to me. How do you handle that?
Patience. It would be the first key, except that I'm not always very patient.
I don't think anybody is always.
Well, I kind of joke, and not everybody everybody deals with things differently. And I find that I try to find humor where I can.
Yeah.
So hopefully this, doesn't upset anybody else. But I mean, I kind of joke sometimes that if we could just trade parents sometimes, I'd be much more patient with your mom than I am with my own.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? So even with Mike's parents sometimes. So I think that it's really just having to take that step back. And I think when you can realize and acknowledge, which sounds kind of funny, they're not doing this on purpose.
Right.
They wouldn't wish to be saying the same story over and over and over again if they could help it. And I think when you can kind of try to come from that empathetic place of, not bless her heart, because that like we always joke about how that, but in the kindest way,
for real, bless her heart.
For real, like she doesn't realize that she's telling the same story. No, none of us would. Even when my kids sometimes will say, Mom, I've already told you that. And I just said, you know what? I remember, I know I asked the question, but I actually wasn't listening for the answer.
Right.
Can you just tell me again?
Tell me again.
I was doing something else at the time. And so I I don't remember exactly what the details of that were. So I think as much as you can, trying to sort of be in their world, which is really hard, and
Mhm.
as much as we can, for me, it's changing the subject. That tends to work the best. And that was also true with Mike's mom especially when she first moved to memory care, and it was a little rough for a few months as she adjusted and just was a little bit confused. And she was not as, there's different stages when you look at the progression of Alzheimer's, and there's different stages, and everybody reacts a little bit differently. But where there's one can tend to be a little bit angrier, if you will. And because again, the other thing too, I think about it is that in many cases, they may be scared to death
Of course.
as they are losing control, or especially if they understand that they're not remembering.
Mhm.
That probably is a much scarier place than my mom, who doesn't even know that she's not remembering. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yes.
Because because then you're going to be coming from a place of fear of, I don't want you to take things away, and I'm feeling so out of control because I'm not remembering these things, and that's scary versus, kind of just being like, oh, everything's good. I mean, my sweet mom, I have to say, she is so appreciative, and
Mm.
which does make it much easier. And then of course makes me feel terrible that I get annoyed with her. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, well, gosh, she's so sweet and she's trying, she wants to be appreciative. It's just, still driving me crazy. But I think that I think it's she wants to be appreciative, and it's just as much as I can just go with that. I'll ask her, how did you have a good day? She'll say, well, I had a great day. And I know better now, or I'll get an elbow from Mike that says, don't ask her what she did.
Right.
She just knows it was a good day.
Right.
Because she sometimes might remember, did you have physical therapy? Because that's important. I need to know, did you have physical therapy today? Because if you didn't, is there somebody you have to fuss at because you're supposed to have had physical therapy
But she
today?
wouldn't remember that though, right?
And it's funny. Sometimes she does. Sometimes she doesn't. There have been many times just in the last 2 months that she's been there. Well, I'll say, did you have physical therapy? And she'll say no. And I said, are you sure? Nope. Are you sure? Nope. I call and they say, yeah, she didn't have physical therapy today. I'm like, well, she knew.
But you have to check on it anyway. You have to verify, right?
I know. Yes, because she's not always a reliable witness. The way Mike has described it before, which I think is such a great analogy, is if you think about dementia as being sort of your brain as Swiss cheese, if you will. Sometimes you hit the cheese and they are just sharp and right on it. And sometimes you hit the holes. And if you think about it that way too, that can sometimes, again, just, I think again, it's the fact that you can't see the deficit, if you will. If you saw somebody with a cast, you would never ask them, well, why aren't you running a marathon? Why aren't you running? Why are you in a wheelchair or whatever? With dementia or any form of dementia, very often they look completely normal.
Yeah.
And that's why it can be so frustrating, because you just think, okay, you look like you have it all there. How can it not be?
Right. So I know that you could probably talk to them about some things about when they were young, right? Isn't that a good way to make conversation with them, is just talk about, like, tell me about when I don't know, something when you were little, or is that?
Yeah, it can be. Yeah, it can be. And again, as things sort of disappear, if you will, as you go backward, for the longest time, Mike's mom, every visit would tell us about how when she was 14, they lived in West Texas in a little town, and she would drive her brother at 14 by herself from the little town to Lubbock,
Texas.
Yeah.
Oh my
to Lubbock
gosh.
to be on this like after school kids TV show at one of the TV stations.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And she would tell us that all the time. And she would tell stories about her sister at that age. And she kind of got stuck in that about 14. Now she's reverted back more. But I also think it's interesting. My mom has never been a great recaller, if you will. I remember when my daughter was first born, and she was pretty sassy when she was a little girl. And I remember thinking, I don't think I would have been like that. I don't know, but I just wouldn't have thought I would. And so 25 years ago, I was asking my mom, what was I like as a little girl? And she really couldn't tell me. So I think that you look at different, it's so fascinating, I think, to see how whether it's your Enneagram number or whatever it is, but that we all retain or reframe memories differently. And
Yeah.
it is interesting sometimes to think of what are the things that really stick and what are the things that, you could say, don't you remember we were in this class together in high school or whatever? And I would
Yeah.
say, no recollection of even being in that
Right.
class. But yet I very specifically remember the English teacher who would go out in the hallway and hit boys with her cane if you were late to class.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
Sure, they all did.
you know what I mean? But so I think that it's
Yes.
funny how there are certain things that stick, and that would be a whole fascinating conversation. What makes some memories stick and some not?
Yes.
But yes, definitely they're more likely to remember the younger memories. And even it could be at first, it's when you were a kid. And then maybe it goes back a little farther. But those are the kinds of things, because it does get hard to have conversations when there's nothing to relate to.
Mm-hmm.
I know mom can. Well, I'm sorry. I was going to say mom can still play a mean game of gin rummy. She can still beat me. Yeah, because she's still knocking and playing. She's doing the knock thing where you keep score, and that was something that she taught me as a kid. But I still don't. I never really played that way, and so I know how to play gin rummy. But once you start throwing knocks and points and all of this stuff, but she still remembers all of that perfectly. She can still play bridge very well.
Wow.
Because long-term memories.
And so is it better to lie to them, to pretend? It's not like, what's the best way to handle these things?
We did one interview that I thought was so fascinating, where it's called therapeutic fibbing.
Okay.
Meaning that, does it make more sense, and is it kinder in some ways to lie, for lack of a better word? I think that is hard, because that's totally counterintuitive to anything we've ever been taught, or the way we were, don't ever lie. I mean, that's the biggest thing when you're a kid, right? Don't blame it on your brother if you did it, that kind of thing. Don't, tell the truth.
Sure.
But I think that as soon as you see an example of this in action, it can kind of help you reframe. One of the very last visit that Mike's parents made to our house, because they live about 3 hours away as well, I will never forget. And at the time, I didn't even process it in the way that I have now. She found out, my mother-in-law found out that her sister had passed away. She'd been sick, and that it wasn't a huge surprise, but still this was the news. And she came out of the bathroom, and I remember my father-in-law was on the phone talking to somebody and saying, "Oh gosh, okay, thank you for letting us know about June, blah, 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 blah." My mother-in-law comes in and says, "What happened to June?" And my father-in-law had to say, "Well, we just got word that she did pass away." And you just saw my mother-in-law, oh, like that, like getting the news for the first time.
Yeah.
That was in the afternoon. The very next morning, she comes out of the bathroom, or out of the bedroom, I think, with her phone, and she's looking at an email, and she says, "June died." Because she'd gotten an email, and that was hearing it again for the first time. And once you hear that, you realize, if we had said again, "Well, yeah, we told you yesterday, June died."
Right.
From all intents and purposes, for her, that was the first time again. That's why when people will say, "Have you seen mom and dad?" When my mother-in-law is asking about, "Have you seen mom and dad?" Rather than say, "Well, they died 40 years ago." "No, I haven't seen them in a while." And that just, that's the kind way to answer. And that feels really weird. And whether it's, a lot of times she might think that Mike is her brother or a cousin or somebody else. And rather than correcting, and it's really hard, especially when it's, if you're been married to this person for 60 plus years and they're thinking that you're their dad, that's got to be really hard. But it's just changing the subject. Or, where's the dog that died a long time ago? Or where even the dog that we've had to take away? Oh, they're at the vet. Because a lot of the time, not always, but a lot of the time, you can appease and then change the subject, which can often just alleviate that awful feeling. And again, especially in those mourning situations or that grief of finding out somebody passed away, if it's going to be like the first time every time. Once I heard that, I thought,
yes,
that's what happened when Mike's mom was here. And we didn't know enough at the time to realize, oh, that's not how to handle it. but obviously, and I think what's that old phrase? The more the more you know, the better you do, or
Hmm.
know more, do better, or something.
Right.
I
When
forget
you
what the
know better, you can
you do.
do
When you
better.
know better,
Yeah.
you do better. Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
And I think that's with
It's
dementia, that is
true.
certainly true.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my mom had some memory issues. She wasn't like terrible, but she certainly couldn't remember who had died and who hadn't
Hmm.
died. And so I learned that one time, just I forgot what I was talking about. She asked about one of her friends, and I said, "Oh, she died." And
Hmm.
it was like she was getting the news for the first time. And I
Hmm.
didn't really realize that my mom didn't remember that, and
Yeah.
she sobbed, and I was like, okay, I'm not. And then
Uh,
she asked me about it the next time, and I was like, oh, she's fine or
yeah,
whatever.
haven't seen her
I
in a
did.
while. Yeah,
Yeah.
and if it makes you feel better to not
Yeah.
tell a bold faced lie, you just say, I
Yeah.
haven't seen him in a while, which is
Yeah.
true, right? So, I
That
mean,
should have been better. I just flat out lied. I
oh
just didn't
no,
want to upset her.
well, and I think that's a great example of, you have to just do what feels good for you, because
Right.
in many cases that might feel better, and there's not a right or wrong. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just a matter of what makes you, if that makes you feel so guilty, that, oh shoot, I
It
can't believe I
it didn't
lied to
make me
her.
feel,
Right.
I mean,
Right. But if it
it,
just made you feel like I'm protecting her from the
yes.
sadness,
Yes.
then that's great. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think we
that's
just have
what I
to,
did.
yeah, I think we just have to figure out what makes it easier for us to do it for them, and just
Yeah.
know that it's really for them, which again feels so counterintuitive.
Yeah. It's so hard. It's so hard to know what to do. I mean, I guess we're just all, navigating this as best we can. Do you have
Mhm.
any other big takeaways or big lessons that you think that we should know about?
Gosh, there's just so many.
There's so many.
I think that it's just that every journey is a little different, and just try don't compare, because your situation may be a little bit different. You can certainly learn from each other. We can share things that we've learned, and that's one of the things that I found so valuable about the community we've built, is that we can
Yeah.
learn from each other. From your experience, I might get a nugget out of it that I can use. May not be the exact same situation, but I think it's also just knowing that we've never done this before. Of
Yes.
course you don't know what to do. Of course you don't know all
Right.
the resources. How would you? How could
Yeah.
you?
Yeah.
Give yourself a little bit of grace, and know that there are places where you can find that community. You can find the information you need, and just take it one step at a time.
Hmm.
Learn what you need to for their case or their situation. And it's going to be different than what your other parent might need. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so
That's
that's,
true.
you approach it from different aspects. But I think that it is just like with our kids. There's no perfect roadmap. There's no, if you do this, then, there's no guarantees. And so as we go, what can we learn from it? And one of the,
Hmm.
again, I try to find humor, but the only benefit of dementia is that if I fuss at my mom or I get impatient with her, fortunately, she doesn't remember.
Yeah.
And that way I get a do-over. So you
You
get more
get,
do-overs with that, which I think is probably the only gift of that I have found
yeah.
in dementia. But that is something that I can do better the next time, and I can
Yeah.
try to be a little more patient the next time, and not either be annoyed or whatever. But I think it's just, know that you don't have to do this alone. There are people that can walk alongside you, whether you actually need help or a service or something like that, or you just need other people around you. Because as I mentioned earlier, I feel like when we talk about it, we can help each other. And that's really what we're so passionate about doing is, can we go into companies? Can we help organizations? Because the more prepared we are, even though this is hard stuff to talk about, it doesn't keep my mom from falling and having a crisis in the middle of the night, but it sure helped me be a lot calmer as I was on the phone with her for 5 hours until 5 a.m, waiting to talk to the surgeon, because I had all of that other stuff taken care of. What can we do that helps bring down the crisis level, if you will, and lets us focus just on the crisis at hand versus all the other things that brings up at the same time.
Yeah, that's really true. And then just being kind to yourself. Like I said, the people who really take care of their parents, those people are angels. And I mean, they
Hmm.
really are doing the hard stuff. And just to give yourself a lot of grace. I always, after my mom died, I moved her like 3 months before she died. And I just often say, why did I move her? Like, I didn't know she was going to die, but like I
Right.
spent all this money moving her and then she was in a place, just blah, 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 all the things. But I was like, I didn't know. I just
Right.
made the best decision I could at the time. And,
Eh,
we have to all realize that.
yeah. And isn't that what we all have to do in every aspect of our life?
Yes, it's true.
Make the best decision with the information we have at hand.
At that time.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what is your best piece of advice for aging well now that you've been around all this aging and parenting aging parents, just in
Yes.
general?
I
Do you
think
have a
being prepared. What are the things that what conversations do we need to have with our own kids and with our parents if we haven't had those yet, so that'll make it a little bit easier. I think
Mhm.
it's exercise, eating well, taking good care of your body and staying strong. I see that being such a huge component in helping us all be able to age better. My
Yeah.
mom played tennis until she was in her 70s and stayed
Wow.
pretty fit. I've seen the difference of her not being able to do that anymore, and it's hard. Yeah, it's hard. It's,
Yeah.
if you put on weight, if you aren't as strong, it just makes everything harder.
Mhm. Yeah. Do you have, this feels like a big shift here, but do you have like a favorite health or beauty product that you personally like?
I'm just a trier. I try so many different things, but I will tell you the one thing that I've been using regularly right now is a tinted sunscreen that
Oh yeah.
I use on my face when I go out before I go walking in the morning, but I also put on my hands every single
Yes.
day. And it actually has helped with some of the like the age spots that I had on my hand that I was noticing on my hands, and it has made some of them go away and it's keeping them
What?
from coming back. Yes.
What
So
brand is it? Do you
it's
want to
just
say?
grocery store CeraVe. It's just a
CeraVe
tinted
tinted?
and it's designed for your face, but I just put it on my
Put
face
on
before
your
I walk,
hands?
and then I put a little bit on my hands because it's tinted because I like
Yeah.
using the mineral sunscreen, but most of those are so white and it
Yes.
just, you just cannot rub them in well enough. And so this
Mhm.
one is a mineral sunscreen, but it has just a
So
little bit of a tint.
CeraVe.
Yeah. So it's just, groceries you can get at the grocery store. I'm trying to use more as much as I can safer, better products
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
when I can. And so this one I haven't actually researched completely, but I have found that it is helping because
Well, your
your
hands look good.
well, I got a good camera, right? But and I probably have some of my hands still from walking earlier. But I think that because our hands show our age,
Mhm.
and
I
there
started
was
putting sunblock on my hands a long time ago. I
I
think
wish I
that
had known
was
sooner. There was a woman in a Bible study that I was in a long time ago, and she had the most beautiful hands. And she said, and I asked her what her secret was, and she wore driving gloves.
Oh, hell.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
I was like, okay, that's a little much. I don't know if I could remember to do that, but I can slather a little sunscreen on the backs of my hands.
driving gloves.
Yeah. But
That's
her hands
awesome.
looked
I
way
bet.
younger than herself. Yeah.
Wow, I bet.
Yeah.
And then another hard turn. This just seems like a bunch of hard turns after that conversation, but
Yeah.
I like to ask everybody, what's your
Yeah.
favorite concert you've ever been to?
I'm not a big concert person.
Really?
I'm not. I still remember my very first one,
Was
which
that?
was Rick Springfield in
Oh,
Houston
God.
at the Summit. And I remember seeing Cool and the Gang at the Houston Rodeo.
Yeah, a lot of people, yeah, the rodeo.
Yes.
I
Yes.
saw Casey and the Sunshine Band at the Houston Livestock
Yes, I remember seeing
whatever
Phil
show and rodeo.
Collins when I was in college in Dallas, and that was fantastic, and I love Amy Grant, we just saw her recently, so, but yeah, I don't know, I'm not a big live music person. I like it, I don't think to. I'd rather probably go to a musical.
Oh, really? Well, what's your favorite musical?
I guess I'd say Wicked, and not just because it came out as a movie. I've seen it 3 times,
Yeah.
in the theater, but I also love Lion King too. It's a really good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are two
And I've
good
seen that one
ones.
multiple times too, so.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, Kim, thank you. I hope that everybody will at least go get the caregiver's key from parenting aging parents. You've really been helpful. There's a million more things. I'll have to have you
Yes.
back because we could keep talking about
Oh
this.
gosh. I mean, yeah, it's just like opening up a can of worms. There are
It
so
is.
many topics and so many things to discuss. But yeah, hopefully we gave people just a few tidbits that they can take home, start getting prepared. That's so important. And just
Hmm.
some language or things to think about too as they're helping their parents. Or just again, it's so much easier to have these conversations when they're hypothetical than when you're in the middle of a
Yes.
crisis.
And then just to know that you're not alone.
Yeah.
I mean, that I think was that was very helpful to me,
Yeah.
when I really did think nobody understands what I'm going through. But yeah, there were plenty of people who were going through the same thing.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
well, thank you, Kim Barnes.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening, friend. From my heart to yours, be well until we meet again.